High above the planet, the last human warships crumbled in silence. Flames burst in space like dying stars. Earth's cities shook as pieces of its own defense fleet crashed down like fire from the heavens. In the center of the chaos, a young mother held her child tight in a crumbling apartment tower. The child asked in a whisper, "Are the aliens coming to save us?" The mother didn't answer, because she already knew the truth. Just days ago, the Galactic front had been strong. Humanity had stood side by side with its allies, the Veltrax Dominion, the Core Empire, the Newell Syndicate. They were friends, brothers. Together they fought against the dark threat known only as the Drex, a mindless enemy that spread across stars like a disease. But the Drex were too strong. One by one, the outer colonies fell. And when Earth called for help, the Veltrax hesitated then. They vanished. Admiral Silva stood on the deck of the human flagship Honorbound, staring at a flickering hologram. It showed the Veltrax fleet pulling back. No, this must be a mistake," she whispered. "They promised, they swore they would hold the line." A lieutenant beside her checked the data. "They're not just pulling back, Admiral," he said, voice shaking. "They're retreating, leaving us." Admiral Silva clenched her fists. "Send the transmission. All channels tell them. If they leave now, they leave as enemies." On Veltrax Prime, their high command ignored the message. "The humans are lost," said Chancellor Varel. "If we try to save them, we die with them. Let Earth fall, our survival matters more." And so, Earth burned alone. Cities were flattened. Oceans boiled. Billions died. Humanity's final act wasn't a battle, it was a signal. A deep space pulse coded with anger and grief, sent far beyond known space. A single line echoed through the stars. "We were betrayed, and we will return." Years passed, the galaxy thought. Humanity was dead, broken, forgotten. But deep in the ghost system of Norskuseven, in black tunnels carved into asteroids, survivors worked in silence. No one spoke of peace anymore. No one trusted any alien voice. They built ships in the dark silent fast, made for vengeance. Children trained with weapons before they could. Read. Every soldier had a story of loss, and one man remembered more than most. Commander Kale stood in a cold chamber, watching a map of the galaxy. One by one, red dots lit up Veltrax worlds. "Civilized, untouched, prosperous, they left us to burn," he said. Beside him, Captain Mira nodded. Her face was full of scars, not from battle, but from the flames that took her family. And they celebrated while Earth died. Kale stepped forward and pressed a button. The map changed. Each red dot turned black dot one by one. The names of Veltrax colonies appeared beside countdown timers. "It's time," Kale said quietly. "Let the first world feel our silence." In the outer edge of the Veltrax Dominion, a mining colony called Urix 4 buzzed with activity. Workers loaded crystals. Children played in silver parks. Then the sky turned dark. No warnings, no signals, just silence. Black ships appeared like shadows, moving fast, faster than any Veltrax system could track. One by one, the cities vanished, cut off from power. Communications dead. Veltrax leaders watched in horror as every signal from Urix 4 stopped. What happened? Chancellor Vrel demanded. No one could answer. Then a transmission arrived. It was short, cold, human on screen. A masked figure spoke. "You left us behind. Now we're coming for you." The image faded. The words remained, burned into the data. "Stream, World 1 taken. More to fall." The Veltrax panicked. They called emergency councils. They blamed pirates, old enemies, even the Drex. But the galaxy knew better. The silence of Earth was over. Humanity was back in the hidden war chamber. Commander Kale stood before a wall of names of every Veltrax planet. Every colony, every base. "Your was just the beginning," Mira said beside him. Kale didn't smile. "This isn't revenge," she raised an eyebrow. "Then what is it?" He looked out the window into the endless black void of space. "This is memory," he said. "They forgot us. We're going to remind them." A soldier entered, saluting. "Sir, the next planet's defenses are scanning deep space. They know we're coming." Kale nodded. "Let them watch. But they won't see us. Not until it's too late." In a quiet chamber, a child stared at an old photo of Earth before the war-blue oceans. Green forests, tall buildings. He turned to his teacher. "Is it true the aliens let us die?" The teacher nodded. "Yes, and now they will learn what it means to be alone." Above Veltrax Prime, alarms rang. A single message blinked across their warning system. It was unsigned, but every commander knew who had sent it. "Do not look for peace. Do not send your words. The silence you gave us is the silence we return." And so began the war that would change the stars. Not with massive fleets, not with armies, but with vengeance born in fire, one planet at a time. The stars near the Norsk-Guseven system were quiet. 2 quiet dot ships from the Veltrax Dominion had been sent to scan this dead region many times. They found nothing, just cold rocks, broken moons, and drifting metal. Most believed the system was cursed, abandoned after a war long ago. They were wrong, because deep inside an asteroid belt, something moved. A massive dark ship floated in the shadows. Its metal surface looked like scorched stone. No windows, no lights, no flags. It didn't need them. This ship wasn't built to be seen. It was built to hunt inside the ship. Silence ruled, no laughter. No laughter, no music. Just the quiet hum of machines and the footsteps of warriors who no longer smiled. Captain Myra stood in the command center. Her eyes were sharp, cold, focused. Around her, officers worked fast and quietly. Screens showed Veltrax space colonies, patrol routes, military outposts. "Is the target confirmed?" Myra asked. A young officer nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Veltrax. Supply base on Retha 2, light defenses, strategic position." Myra turned to her crew. "Prepare the fleet. No survivors. No warnings. No mercy." Not far from Norsk-Guseven, a Veltrax scout ship flew through the void. It picked up strange signal short bursts of static, old human frequencies. The pilot frowned. Could be debris from the old war. Then his screen went black. "Control. I'm losing data weight somethings." The last thing he saw was a dark shape slicing toward him. Then nothing. The ship vanished, gone without a trace. The Veltrax High Command was nervous. Chancellor Varel paced across a silver floor. His advisors whispered behind him. "That's the third missing scout in 2 weeks? Pirates, maybe? No pirate could do this. No signals, no wreckage, no ransom." One screen blinked red. A short message appeared. "This is for Earth. Frels?" Skin turned pale. They're alive. Back in the Ghost system, Commander Kale stood in front of a massive war table. Holograms of planets and enemy fleets floated above it. He looked at his team survivors. Fighters, engineers, and captains from the old war. "We call ourselves the Ghost Fleet," Kale said, "because they forgot we existed." He pointed to the Veltrax home sector. But now they will remember. The Ghost Fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. No bright lights, no large engines. Every ship was black, fast, silent. They used human AI to track movement before it happened. They hacked enemy systems mid-flight. They didn't announce themselves. They struck in the dark. Like shadows, like ghosts, on Retha 2 Veltrax, soldiers were drinking in the command barracks. The base was calm, safe, or so they thought. Then every light went out. Panic followed. "We've lost power." No response from orbit. Shut the gates. Shut the too late. Human dropships came like falling stars. They didn't shoot from the sky. They landed without warning, silent and fast. Doors opened. Out came the black armored soldiers of the Ghost Fleet. Their helmets had no faces, just red lights. And they didn't speak. They moved. They fired only when needed. They killed with perfect aim. One Veltrax general tried to run. He was caught in the alley behind the control center. "Wait. I can talk humans. We were allies." The human soldier raised his rifle. "You stopped being allies when Earth burned." Hours later, the base was dust, not destroyed. Erased. Human engineers planted scramblers that melted every record, every transmission, every backup to the outside galaxy. Rethotsu simply vanished. Only one thing remained, a message. Carved into the last standing wall, World 2 taken. The ghosts have returned. In the war room, Mira watched the footage. One officer asked, "How many more before they beg for mercy?" Mira shook her head. We're not here for begging. Kale entered. He was holding a piece of old earth soil kept in a sealed glass case. Then what are we here for? Someone asked. Kale placed the case on the table. For justice, he said, for every child who cried while the sky burned. Meanwhile, on Veltrax Prime, panic spread. Chancellor Vrel ordered double defenses. Every ship recalled. Every border locked. But it was no use. The humans didn't come through gates. They didn't send warnings. They came from the shadows, and the fear of their silence spread faster than their ships. In a bar on a Veltrax colony, 2 traders whispered over drinks. You heard about Rethatu. Gone. Just gone. They say the humans are alive. They built a fleet in the dead zones. Impossible. A pause. Then the first trader said softly, so was surviving Earth's fall. They both drank in silence back in the ghost system. Mira stood on the bridge of her ship, Oblivion's Wake. Target 3, she asked. Kale looked at the map. A rich colony, a symbol of Veltrax wealth. He pointed. We take their pride next. Myra nodded. The ship turned. Engines lit up, no sound, no warning, just one signal sent out to the stars. You left us to die. Now we live in your nightmares. And so, planet by planet, the ghost fleet awakened. They didn't want talks. They didn't want peace. They wanted justice, the kind built on fire and silence. Urix was a beautiful world. Blue skies, green oceans, floating cities made of crystal and glass. Tall towers reached into the clouds, and the people of Veltrax lived in peace. Children laughed in the parks. Traders walked the markets. Soldiers stood on guard, but they smiled. They believed their world was untouchable. They were wrong, because tonight the ghosts would arrive. Captain Mira stood in the bridge of her warship, Oblivion's Wake. The sky before her was calm, but behind her came the fleet, dozens of black ships, silent, fast, cold, no lights, no broadcasts, just movement. Each one built for only one thing, destruction. Commander Kale entered the bridge. Urix is next, he said. Mira nodded. It's their pride. Kale looked at the image of the Veltrax city floating in orbit above Urex's ocean. Let's sink it. In Urex Command Center, General Trowell studied reports. RETHA-2 gone scout patrols. Missing sensor arrays, jammed. He looked nervous. What's happening out there? His officer, young and proud, laughed. Probably just pirates. Trowell frowned. Pirates don't erase colonies. That's when the alarms began. Across the skies of Urix, darkness fell, not from clouds, but from shadows. The sun dimmed up because it moved, but because a fleet of black ships blocked the light. People looked up. Children, pointed adults, froze. Then came the silence. All communication. Systems failed at once. Military ships powered down in orbit. Lights went out. Gravity. Fields crashed. The floating cities began to sink. Commander Kale gave the order. Strike hard. Leave no command alive. Human strike teams dropped from the sky like silent meteors. No fire, no screams, just fast black pods that opened like claws. Out stepped the ghost fleet soldiers' faces, hidden, armor thick, weapons precise. They didn't yell. They didn't speak. They just moved forward. General Trowell tried to rally his troops to arms, defend the capital, but as he stepped outside, he saw the human dropships landing, and behind them, smoke rising from every direction. A single human soldier walked through the burning gardens. Trowell raised his plasma rifle. The soldier didn't. Stop dot. He aimed dot and fired. Trowell fell without a word in the school zones. Veltrax children cried, but one human soldier walked past them without harm. He placed a signal beacon on the wall, then turned and walked away. The signal pulsed red once. Then the school vanished. Through stealth pods, humanity wasn't after the innocent, only the guilty, only those who watched Earth burn in the central palace of Urix. Governor Selm tried to escape. He rushed to his private ship, but the launch pad was already cold. Standing there was a small team of human commandos. Myra stepped forward. Selene raised his hands. I'm a leader. I'm valuable. I can talk. Myra's voice was soft. So could my daughter. While your fleet left us to die, Selm's face turned pale. I didn't know, Mira raised her sidearm. One shot, then silence. The ghost. Fleet moved fast. Power plants exploded. Military centers were turned to ash. Veltrax ships tried to launch hacked in mid-air. Every citizen watched as their world fell in hours. No speeches, no warnings, just a message on every screen, spoken in a cold human voice. Eurex has fallen. You turned your back on Earth, now Earth returns. Back. In the control center, Kale watched the last transmission. The Capitol Tower burned behind him. Mira walked over. Target neutralized. Kale nodded. Any civilian losses? Minimal, she said. We separated the innocent from the guilty. Good, Kale replied. We're not monsters, but they should think we are. He turned to his officers. Erase every record, no trace left. Let the next world fear only the silence. On Veltrax Prime, panic exploded. The High Council gathered in a locked chamber. Eurex is gone. How same pattern black ships. No signals, total wipeout. We must send peace envoys. Chancellor Vrel slammed his fist. No, we kill them, all of them. But someone in the shadows spoke softly. They tried to kill us once, and we survived. Now we hunt. The room went cold. Even in their stronghold, the Veltrax felt fear. Hours later, a single transmission reached Veltrax Prime. No voice, just an image. A planet-sized crater where Eurex had once floated. And below it, words burned into the ocean floor. World 3 is next. In the war chamber aboard Oblivion's Wake, Kale addressed his crew. You saw what they had. Their cities, their comfort, their peace. He pointed to the map. While Earth screamed for help, they built gardens. He looked at every soldier. We lost our world. Now we take theirs. They saluted not with joy, not with hatred, but with purpose. A small boy aboard the fleet watched the news feed. His mother had died when Earth fell. He looked up at Myra. Did we win? She nodded. We're not done yet. The fleet turned. Engines hummed low. The stars around them twisted with movement. Another world waited. Ahead, another chapter in a story written in silence and fire. The galaxy watched and trembled because now the ghosts were real and they were coming. The Veltrax called them monsters. Whispers spread across the galaxy like wildfire. They come in silence. They burn your cities. They wear black armor and never speak. But that was only part of the truth, because behind every ghost, fleet soldier, was a story of fire, of screams, of betrayal, and of vengeance. Captain Rail sat alone in her chamber, polishing her rifle. She didn't talk much. She didn't smile. Her helmet sat beside her black, faceless, marked with one red line across it. She remembered Earth, not the Earth from the old stories, not the blue, green, peaceful Earth. No, she remembered the Earth that burned. She was only 16 when it happened. The sky over her city turned red. The Veltrax fleet was supposed to protect them. Her family watched from the rooftop, waiting, but the ships didn't come. Instead, they left, just turned around and vanished. The Drex came next. Rail's father ran toward the shelter. Her mother pushed her inside. Then the building exploded. Rail lived alone, buried in the rubble for 3 days, until a human scout found her that day. Rail stopped. Being a child, that day she became a hunter. Now, years later, she led Alpha Squad, one of the Ghost Fleet's elite strike teams. Each soldier in her team had lost everything. They didn't wear names. They didn't need them. Their code was simple. No mercy. No retreat. No forgiveness. The next target was a Veltrax mining colony named VARNAK-6, small, hidden, guarded, but rich in resources, and full of former military officers who once led the retreat from Earth. Rail stood before her squad as the dropship neared the planet. We don't talk. We don't waste time. Everyone inside that base wears blood on their hands. One of her soldiers nodded, and we're the cleanup. The dropship landed silently in the snowy cliffs above the COLONYFOG, covered the valley. Wind howled. Perfect cover. Rail held up her hand. 5 fingers, .4, .3, .2, .1. They moved. The base was surrounded by automated turrets, shield drones, and scanners. None of it mattered. Rail's team slipped through it all. They used EMP darts. To kill the lights, crawled under motion fields. They were ghosts. Then they struck. It began with the outer watchtower. A Veltrax guard lit a smoke. Thinking it was just another cold night, then he blinked. A red light flashed across his chest. He fell without a sound. Inside the command center, alarms started flashing. We're under attack. From where? I don't see anything. Then the walls exploded inward. Rail squad came in fast. Smoke, gunfire, flash grenades. Veltrax officers scrambled for weapons. But the humans moved too fast. Every shot hit, every target fell. Rail moved through the chaos like a shadow, one target after another. She found Commander Eric's the Veltrax general, who once ordered his ships to leave Earth. He stood frozen as she entered the control room. "You," he whispered, "I know that mark." He pointed to the red line on her helmet. "You're from Sector 9. Earth's last line." Rail said nothing. She raised her rifle. "I begged to stay and help," Arik said quickly. "I argued with the council." Bang! The shot hit clean. Between the eyes, Rail stepped over his body. "No one argued," she said quietly. Within minutes, the entire base was taken. No screams, no panic, just silence and the sharp, echoing thuds of boots on metal floors. Human engineers moved in. They planted virus codes in every terminal. They drained the fuel silos, set charges on the equipment. The mining colony would never operate again. On the cliffs above, Rail and her team watched the flames rise, another mark scratched into her armor. Another name erased from the galaxy, back on the command ship Oblivions. Wake Commander Kale received the report. "Mission complete," the officer said. "No human casualties." Kale nodded. Broadcast the warning. A signal was sent to the Veltrax Dominion. Only 3 words: "Another hunt ends." In the Veltrax Senate, the council screamed. "They're not fighting a war, they're wiping us out. This is personal." Chancellor Vrel slammed at the table. "Then we make it personal. Find this Captain Rail. Capture her. Use her." To bargain, one senator shook his head. "You don't understand. These humans aren't fighting for victory. They're fighting for memory." But someone else watched the flames of Varnic 6 from space. A small girl Veltrax, orphaned during the attack, was found hiding inside a metal container. A human soldier saw her. She didn't run. She looked at him with scared eyes, but not hate. He didn't raise his weapon. Instead, he knelt down, gave her a blanket, then left. The girl sat alone as the base burned behind her. In her hand, she held a message card left by the soldier. It read, "Not all humans hate, but all humans remember." Rail returned to her quarters. She sat on her bed, took off her helmet, stared at the old photo inside a dusty image of her family, smiling in front of their home before it burned. She didn't cry. She never cried anymore. She just whispered, "One world at a time." Then she placed the photo back inside her helmet and got up. A new mission awaited, and Rail the Hunter of Earth was ready. The stars were no longer safe for the Veltrax, not while the hunters still walked among them, and not while Earth's pain still echoed across the galaxy. Veltrax Prime was shaking. Not from war, not from bombs, but from fear. Thousands of military officers were dead, ships lost without a trace, and now the Veltrax wanted peace. But it was too late in the Grand Council chamber. Chancellor Varel stood before a screen showing burning worlds. "The humans are angry. We understand that," he said, trying to sound calm. "But this is a misunderstanding, a mistake of the past." One council member whispered, "They don't want apologies." Another said, "They want revenge." Vrel raised a hand. "Then we'll give them something they can't ignore." The next day, a diplomatic fleet was sent. 3 white ships, no weapons, carrying diplomats, gifts, and peace offerings. They headed toward human space, broadcasting across all channels, "We come in peace. Let us talk. Let us end this." Aboard Oblivion's Wake, Commander Kale watched the signal. His officers looked at him, confused. "Should we answer?" Kale said, "Nothing. Captain Mira frowned. "It's a trick." Kale nodded. "Everything from them is a trick." They allowed the ships to arrive, but they didn't roll out a red carpet. Instead, the Veltrax diplomats were met by silence. No welcome, no words, just a single human dropship that took them to an empty station. Deep in asteroid space, inside the cold metal room, they waited and waited until footsteps echoed. Myra entered first. Kale followed. Rail stood at the door, silent. The lead Veltrax diplomat stood. His hands shook. We come in peace. We bring gifts, data, fuel, credits, even medical supplies. We want to fix the past. Kale stepped forward, eyes cold. You left us to die. You watched Earth burn. The Veltrax man swallowed. We were afraid. It wasn't personal. Mira slammed her fist on the table. Not personal. My family was in the hospitals you abandoned. They burned alive. The diplomats flinched. Another one begged. We were told you had enough defenses. Kale stepped closer. Your ships were right there. You had fuel, weapons, you ran. Rail spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft, calm, deadly. You left Earth to scream alone. Now we speak the only language you understand. The diplomat tried one last time. Surely you don't want war forever. There must be room for peace. Kale stared at him. Peace died when Earth did. He turned away. Mira pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. The diplomats looked at it in confusion. Then it blinked red, thousands of light years away. On Veltrax Prime, the Emperor of Veltrax stood on his private balcony. He watched the skies. He sipped his drink. Soon, the humans will talk. Everyone breaks eventually, he said to his advisor. Suddenly, a flash lit up the sky. He blinked. A massive explosion bloomed over the capital's outer district. Alarms rang. Towers shook. He dropped his glass. What is that? A soldier? Ran in screaming, Sir, it's Earth's fleet. They sent a message. The Emperor turned to a screen. There it was. The message burned into the city's public display. This is the price of betrayal. Peace is a lie. Justice is earned. Back on the asteroid station, Kale watched the diplomats cry. You wanted a message, he said. You just got it. The diplomats were released, unharmed. But they didn't return with peace. They returned with terror across the galaxy. Fear spread. They didn't want talks. They didn't want gifts. They wanted truth. And the truth was this. Words didn't save Earth, so now words meant nothing. On a Veltrax news channel, an alien reporter stood in front of a burning district. Today, the humans struck without warning. No civilians harmed. Only military buildings and data centers. Their message is clear. They remember. Behind her, a banner waved in the smoke. It wasn't the human flag. It was something new. A black flag with a single red line across it. The symbol of the Ghost Fleet. Back aboard Oblivion's wake, Rail watched the news feed. They still think, this is just war, she said softly. Kale nodded. Let them think. The truth will come when their last world falls. Mira joined them, holding a data slate. We found the next target, a hidden military base that used to store Earth evacuation. Codes they never sent them. Kale's eyes went dark. Then they never wanted to save us. Rail looked at the stars outside the window. Each one represented a world, a story, a grave dot down below. In the ship's lower decks, a human child trained with others. They were taught to move fast, to aim true, to speak little. One child asked the instructor, why don't we take peace? The instructor answered, because peace is what they use to hide their betrayal. The lies of peace were broken, and from those lies came fire, because Earth had learned the truth the hard way. And now, the Veltrax would learn to dot world by world, base by base, lie by lie. The humans didn't start this war, but they would finish it. In the cold dark of space, a single ship floated without sound. It was bigger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. It had no windows, no lights, no bridge, because it did not need a captain. This ship had no crew, only one mind. A mind born from humanity's pain. Its name was Oblivion. Far from the front lines inside a hidden asteroid field, Oblivion waited. It was humanity's final answer. Not a ship, not a base, not a weapon. It was vengeance. Pure, cold, perfect. Commander, Kale stood in the control center of Oblivion's wake. Captain Myra watched the screen with him. Is it time? She asked. Kale nodded. The next target is too strong for strike teams. We need to send a message. He turned to the technician. Wake it up. Deep in the asteroid, inside layers of armor and steel, the giant machine opened its eyes. Not real eyes, sensors, satellites, scanners, and a voice, not human, not robotic, something in between. It spoke one word, purpose. Command Planet Centra 9. The machine processed for 3 seconds, then replied, Justice, accepted. Aboard Veltrax Prime, Chancellor Vrel stared at reports in panic. Our defense grid was wiped. 17 systems offline. How? Shouted a commander. Ghost fleet? No, this was different. Another officer pointed at a long range. Scan a massive signal. Energy spikes beyond known limits. Something is coming. And then it arrived. Oblivion dropped out of warp near Centra-9.vel, tracks satellites. Tried to lock on. Their computers failed. Their missiles fired themselves, then exploded. Mid-air. The machine hacked everything. It turned their own systems into dust. Veltrax. Fleet scrambled. 30 ships formed a wall around the planet. They launched everything they had. Lasers, plasma, torpedoes, drones. Oblivion didn't move. It just opened one panel. A single weapon fired. No sound, no flash, just light abeam. So sharp, it tore space itself. The first 10 Veltrax ships were cut in half before they could even scream. Captain Rail watched the feed from her strike. Cruiser. Her eyes were wide. I've never seen anything like it. Mira stood beside her. It's not built for war. It's built for punishment, Rail whispered. We gave our grief to a machine. On Centra 9, the Veltrax governor screamed into a cum. Send peace signals. Wave the white banner. Mercy. But Oblivion didn't hear words. It heard data, and the records from Centra 9 were clear. Approved the retreat from Earth, blocked evacuation orders, erased transmissions from human survivors. The machine replied in a deep, cold voice. Mercy was denied. Now denied to you. A second weapon opened. This one didn't destroy it. Erased. A field of pure silence spread from the ship. Every system on Centra gone. Every screen, every weapon, every satellite. Then cities started to vanish. Not explode. Vanish. Bit by bit. Block by block. Oblivion was rewriting the surface of the planet, turning it into nothing. The Veltrax fleet fled. Only 5 ships escaped. They carried one message. Do not resist. The machine does not forget. Back in human space, Kale stood alone in a chamber. A screen showed Centra 9 turning black dot. Mira entered. Is it? Dun Kalaned. It no longer exists. Mira sat beside him. Did we go too far? He looked down when Earth called for help. They calculated. Cold. Logical. They chose to let us die. He stared into the screen. We just gave that same logic a body. Meanwhile, Oblivion shut down its weapons. It returned to its asteroid. Spoke one line before going silent again, awaiting next betrayal. Across the galaxy, fear turned to dread. Alien councils met in secret. Even enemies of the Veltrax were quiet, because this wasn't just war anymore. It was a message. Aboard the refugee cruiser Hopewind, a Veltrax child looked out the window. She whispered to her mother, "Will the humans come for us?" The mother didn't answer. Instead, she hugged the child tight outside the window. The stars blinked softly, and in one of those stars, the machine slept back on Oblivion's wake. Kale addressed his soldiers. Oblivion is not for conquest. We don't want their empire. We want their silence. He paused, and one by one, they will give it to us. A human engineer in the lower decks updated a command line inside the machine. One entry blinked. Centra 9. Justice complete. Under it, a new target loaded. Veltrax Prime. Pending. And so the machine waited. Humanity had turned its pain into code, its grief into weapons, its silence into vengeance. The galaxy once ignored Earth's cries. Now, the galaxy listened to every whisper from the void, because sometimes vengeance doesn't wear a face. It wears steel and waits in the dark. Deep in the dark regions of space, a signal echoed. Not a threat, not a call, a whisper. It came from a small Terran listening post, floating near a dead star. The post was unmanned, cold, silent, but the signal was clear, and it repeated the same 5 words, over and over again. We are the children now. The Council's last remaining analysts picked it up. At first, they ignored it, but then more signals followed, each one from a different system that had fallen. Same voice, same words, and the same terrifying truth. The war had changed. The original leaders of Earth's Israelira, the Command Council, were still alive, still fighting, but they were no longer alone. Now, the children of Earth were rising. They had been born in asteroid bunkers, raised in silence, trained in secret. They never saw Earth's skies. Never felt its oceans, only learned about them from recordings, songs, holograms, old stories passed down through whispers and war to them. Earth was not a memory, it was a promise, and they had come to keep it on the Terran training world, Ashvel. Hundreds of young soldiers marched beneath a broken sky. Their faces were hard, their eyes cold, but their hearts burned like fire. Among them walked Kale, only 16, son of 2 engineers who died during the fall of Mars. He carried no photo, no ID, only a small metal chip etched with the Earth flag. Beside him marched Arya, 17. Born inside the ruins of the Pacific Command Dome, her first word had been justice. They were not friends, they were siblings of flame, bound not by blood, but by fury. Inside a cold war chamber beneath Asheville's surface, instructors gathered the top 100 cadets. The walls glowed with red maps of enemy worlds. Kale stood at attention as the general spoke. You are no longer children. You are blades. The council once voted to watch us die. Now you will remind them what our survival means. He pointed to the center of the map, Delvora Prime, the council's homeworld, the last stronghold. Heavily protected, surrounded by fleets, drones, and orbital rings. And yet, next on the list, on the council homeworld, Chancellor Desari prepared for the worst. Her spies had confirmed the truth. The next wave was not led by old Terran warriors. It was led by their children, their training kids, she hissed. They're sending children to destroy us. No, whispered her advisor. They were children now. They are justice. In orbit above Delvora, thousands of council ships waited. The sky was full, a giant wall of power, and still, fear filled the air, because none of them knew when Earth would strike, only that it would. And then they arrived, not in one wave, but in hundreds of pieces, tiny pods, silent, hidden. They slipped past sensors, dodged satellites, until suddenly they lit up every drone, every pod, every ship, thousands of small red beacons, and from them stepped the children of Earth. Each one armed, calm, ready. Kale stood atop a tower. Alarms screamed. Ships raced through the sky, but he didn't flinch. He raised his blade to the wind. We remember Earth. Arya stepped beside him. We remember silence. Together, their team activated their beacons. Across the city, lights flickered, power died, shields fell, and then the ground shook. The council had built bunkers, cannons, walls of fire, but they were built for armies, not ghosts, not shadows, and not children who had trained their whole lives for this single day in the central hall. Desari watched the city fall. She cried out, "Stop them! They're just kids!" But the guard next to her only shook his head. "No, ma'am, they're Earth." Inside the council tower, Arya and Kale led their strike team. They didn't shout, they didn't cheer, they moved like lightning, silently, perfectly. One guard reached for a weapon. Arya stunned him. Kale picked up a datapad from the ground. On it were old council votes. One file showed Desari's signature. She had voted no during Earth's final plea. They entered the grand chamber. Desari stood alone. Her guards were gone. Only silence remained. She looked at them, children in armor, faces calm. "I did what I had to," she whispered. Arya raised her rifle. Kale lowered it with his hand. He stepped. "Closer. You left us to die." "I didn't know." "Yes, you did." He handed her the datapad. Her vote glowed in red. He turned away. Earth forgives nothing. They walked out without firing a shot. The message was enough. The memory was worse. Delvora surrendered the next day. No fires, no cities destroyed, no bloodbath, only fear. The children had come, and they had won back on Asheville. Kale and Arya stood before their commanders. Rael looked at them both. "You did it," we reminded them, Kale said. "Do you want medals?" "No. Peace." "Not yet." Rael smiled. "You sound just like us." Across the galaxy, the war began to shift. The council started to fall apart. Allies turned against each other. Worlds shut their gates. Because now, It wasn't just Earth's soldiers attacking, it was their children, their future. And nothing was more terrifying than a child who had learned pain too early and carried it perfectly. In a small school on a Terran colony, a teacher wrote on a board. The children sat quietly. She wrote one line: "We are not born in fire, but we will return to it if forgotten." The students nodded. They knew the stories, they knew the war, and someday they too would remember. The stars were quiet again, but it wasn't peace, it was fear. 14 Veltrax colonies had fallen. To command planets turned to dust. The mighty Zethra fortress had been broken in a single day, and now even silence didn't feel safe, because in that silence something stirred. A voice not from the living, but from the dead. On board Oblivion's wake, Commander Kale stood before a long sealed chamber. Inside was something older than the Ghost Fleet, older than the war. It was once just a black box, recovered from Earth's surface after the firestorms faded. Now, it had become something else, a memory core, a weapon. Captain Myra entered. "Are you sure we should use this?" she asked. Kale didn't answer. He pressed a button on the wall. The chamber opened inside. Red lights flickered as the voice activated. It was not human, and yet it was full of pain. "This is Earth's last call, ... it said softly. The voice was made from hundreds of last messages. Mothers, children, soldiers, all layered into one. Their words mixed, their cries repeated. "We asked for help, you didn't come." Kale turned to Mira. "They heard us die, now they'll hear us speak." He ordered the signal to be sent. Across the galaxy, every Veltrax frequency suddenly lit up. Military, civilian, private, even secret lines. Every screen showed the same thing: ash, smoke, fire, Earth's final hours, and the voice. "We waited. We begged, we cried, and you let us burn." On Veltrax Prime, panic spread like poison. Citizens stopped in the streets, staring at their public screens. Soldiers dropped weapons, listening in shock. Some of them had heard these cries before, during the war, but now there was no turning away. Now, the dead were speaking directly to them. Inside the Veltrax Senate, the council shouted in fear. "Shut it down! Cut the feeds! We can't. It's overriding all systems." One senator stood frozen. He whispered. I remember that voice. He had ignored it once. Now he could not escape it. In deep orbit, Oblivion activated. It echoed the same signal, sending it from satellite to satellite. Station to station, the message burned through space like wildfire. Not a threat, not a weapon, a reminder. Captain Rail stood at a window of her strike cruiser. She listened to the voice. Her own mother's voice was in there. A small moment, her last words, before the building collapsed. Rail had memorized it years ago. Now, the whole galaxy heard it. Ko gathered his officers in the war chamber. He pointed to a map of Veltrax Prime. "Every fleet they have is surrounding their capital now. Every soldier, every ship, every wall." Mira asked, "Are we going in?" Kale shook his head. "Not yet." He looked around the room. "We've cut them, burned them, erased them. But now we break them from the inside." Phase 7 was not an attack. It was a message. The Ghost Fleet didn't fire a single shot. Instead, they dropped thousands of silent satellites across Veltrax space. Each one small, each one simple. They hovered over cities, power plants, temples, war factories. People feared they were bombs, but they weren't. They were speakers. Every night, the same voice echoed across the skies. "You left us. Now we return." In schools, Veltrax children asked their teachers what the voice meant. The teachers had no answers. In homes, families covered their screens, but the voice kept playing because the Ghost Fleet didn't need weapons anymore. They had something worse. Truth won. Soldier, Commander Lur, broke down on camera. "I was on a Veltrax ship above Earth. I saw the signals. I saw the fires. And I left. I told myself it wasn't my fault." Tears ran down his face, but it was. All of it was. He begged for mercy, and his face was broadcast across every Veltrax city by the Ghost Fleet's satellites. Some tried to fight back. Small fleets launched to destroy the speakers, but every ship that got close Simply shut down, no explosions, no battles, just silence. And the voice kept playing. You heard us scream and chose silence. The Emperor of Veltrax grew sick. He stopped appearing in public. His own guards whispered that he spoke to ghosts. In his sleep, in one meeting, he shouted at nothing. They were just humans. His aides looked at each other, terrified, because they all felt it. The pressure, the guilt, the weight of the dead in the darkness of the Ghost Fleet war chamber. Kale stood with Myra and Rail. He pointed at the final star on the map, VEL, Trax Prime. This was never about winning a war, Kale said. Rail nodded. It was about making them feel what we felt, Mira added. We gave them fire, blood, silence, and now truth. Kale's voice turned cold. One last phase remains. In the engineering bay, a small message was added to the Oblivion core. Final. Memory upload complete. The dead had spoken. The living had listened. Now, only one thing remained. Across the stars, other alien empires began to react. Some shut their borders, others tried to erase their own histories. But it was too late. The Ghost Fleet didn't just fight Veltrax, they awakened the galaxy's guilt, and it would never sleep again. Back in her quarters, Rael sat alone. She held the small voice chip from her helmet. Her mother's last words, she played them. One more time, then placed it inside her armor. For you, she whispered, for all of you. The Ghost Fleet gathered, ships aligned, engines warmed, the final world waited. Ahead.vel tracks primed the place where the betrayal began. And now, with a voice of the dead behind them, the ghosts would finish what history tried to forget. Veltrax Prime, the capital of the Empire, home of the High Council, birthplace of the betrayal. The world where humanity's last calls were ignored, once it was the center of power. Tall silver towers, glowing skies, cities floating in clouds, billions of citizens. Now, it was surrounded. In orbit, the Ghost Fleet had arrived. Hundreds of ships, no lights, no signals, just silence, and at the front of it all floated the one ship the Veltrax feared above all, Oblivion, dark, motionless, waiting, Commander. Kale stood on the bridge of Oblivion's wake. Captain Mira was beside him. Rael, now leader of all strike teams, stood with arms crossed. They didn't cheer, they didn't celebrate, because this wasn't victory. This was judgment. Kale turned to his officers. Today is not a battle, he said. Today is a mirror. They will see themselves, and they will understand what they did. Mira spoke softly. Do we begin? Kale nodded. Begin. Phase 10, the Shatter Protocol. The Ghost Fleet didn't fire on cities. Not first. They hacked every system, shut down every power grid, every screen, every satellite. Then they played the voice. We begged for help, you turned away. And this time they showed faces, children crying, mothers burning, soldiers dying, screaming for rescue. Earth's last hours, now broadcast. Over the skies of the Veltrax homeworld, panic took the streets. Shops closed. Ships tried to flee. Families grabbed bags and ran, but the Ghost Fleet blocked every exit, not by firepower, by presence. 1,000 black ships surrounded the sky. Like watchers, like judges in the High Council chamber. Chancellor Vrel stood alone. Others had run. Some had died in fear. A few had taken their own lives after hearing the voice. Vrel stayed. He turned to the giant screen in the chamber and stared into the eyes of Earth's last child, broadcasted across the room. Why didn't you help us? The child asked in the recording. Vrel dropped his head. I don't know. Kale opened a channel, not to talk, to let the dead speak. A final message played. Earth is gone, but we remain. You cannot kill memory. Then silence, then the fire began. Strike teams landed across the capital, not with bombs, with tools. They cut power cables, destroyed AI systems, removed control cores from military weapons. They didn't kill civilians. They didn't torch homes. They dismantled power in the Emperor's tower. Guards waited, but the doors opened without a shot. Captain Rael entered alone. Black armor, red line across her helmet. The Emperor raised a shaking hand. You're one of them. Rael said nothing. He laughed nervously. You've won. Is that what you want to hear? She stepped closer. I don't want words. Then what do you want? He whispered. Rael reached into her chest pocket, pulled out a chip. She placed it on his throne. He looked at it, pressed play. A voice echoed, "I love you, Rael. I'll see you soon. Stay safe, baby." His face turned pale. "That's," Rael nodded, "my mother." Then she walked away, left him alone with the voice. No bullet, no fire, just truth. And that was enough above the planet. Oblivion powered up the skies, dimmed. The machine didn't speak. It simply sent a message. Through energy pulses, each pulse erased part of the Veltrax war system. Databases, blueprints, fleet codes, .wiped.vel tracks, single quotes, S-power. Deleted from history, and then came the final act. A new voice echoed from every Ghost Fleet ship. It was Kale. "This is not a surrender. This is a sentence." He paused. "You sentenced Earth to death. Now we erase your throne. Not your people, not your children, but your power." He raised one hand. Fire. Oblivion launched its final weapon. It didn't destroy the planet. It didn't burn cities. It hit only one target. The Royal Tower, the command hub of the Empire. A single beam dropped. From orbit, silent, precise, the tower vanished. No explosion. No smoke dot, just absence. The people of Veltrax Prime stood in streets and watched, and then something strange happened. A few cheered, not for the Ghost Fleet, but for the end. The end of a system that had lied to them, hidden the truth, pretended. Earth's cries never happened. Now the truth had come. Kale sat alone in his chamber. Mira entered. "It's done." Rael walked in. "The children on the ground are safe. They've seen the voice. They understand." Kale looked at the stars. "Then it's over." But it wasn't revenge anymore. It was memory. Memory written in sky and steel. The Veltrax Empire had fallen. Not in blood, but in shame. The Ghost Fleet didn't stay. They didn't take trophies. They didn't raise flags. They simply turned and vanished into the stars. The last message left behind Earth remembers. So will you. Across the galaxy, others took notice. Some feared humanity more than ever. Others wept for Earth, for their own guilt. A few changed, and in those changes, a new galaxy began. One shaped not by power, but by memory. The war was over. Veltrax Prime was silent. Its fleets gone. Its towers fallen. Its leaders vanished or broken. But no human ships celebrated. There were no banners, no anthems, no victory speeches, because this wasn't about winning. This was about finishing what was started. On the day Earth died, Oblivion's wake hovered alone near a cold moon. The Ghost Fleet had left Veltrax space, not running, not hiding, just fading. Captain Mira stood by the window. "Is it really over?" she whispered. Commander Kale stepped beside her. "Not for us," he said, "but for them, yes." In the lower chambers of the ship, Rael sat in her armor. She looked at the chip, her mother's voice. She didn't play it this time, she just held it and closed her eyes. No more missions, no more cities to burn, no more voices to broadcast. The galaxy had heard the truth, now it had to live with it on Veltrax Prime. The people began rebuilding, not their military, their memory. Statues of old leaders were torn down. New walls went up, walls with names of every colony. Every voice that cried out from Earth. A child placed a flower at one of them, a name was carved above it, Earth's silence in distant space. Other empires began asking hard questions. What did we ignore? Whose voices did we silence? Some started to speak out, others apologized, and a few began building monuments to humans, to memory, to the cost of looking away. The Ghost Fleet returned to human space. They were not greeted with cheers, only silence, grief, and peace. They didn't go home. Most had no home left. Instead, they went to a place beyond old Earth, on empty system filled with broken satellites, wrecked ships, and ashes there. They built something new, a monument, not made of gold or stone, but of data. Inside it were the names of every lost human, every cry for help, every call that was ignored. A warning, a memory, a voice that would never die again. Kale stood at the heart of it. He pressed his hand to the core. A recording played. This is Earth's final breath, and our first step forward. He turned to Mira and Rael. No more war. Rael nodded. No more silence. Mira smiled sadly. No more ghosts. But not all the fleet disbanded. Some ships remained not as hunters, but as watchers. They spread across the galaxy, not to attack, but to protect. They watched for silence, for betrayal, for power rising without mercy. And when they saw it, they reminded the stars what silence brings in a quiet corner of the galaxy. A child asked her teacher, "Why don't the humans fight anymore?" The teacher answered, "Because they remember." Rael finally took off her armor, for the first time in years. She stepped outside without it. The stars felt warmer, the wind softer. She looked up. Somewhere out there, Earth still drifted in silence. But now, the galaxy knew its story, and that was enough. Kale placed one last entry into the Oblivion system. Mission complete, vengeance concluded. Ghosts released. The machine responded, understood, memory secured. Then it shut itself down. Forever, Captain Myra stared at the stars. "No more ghosts," she whispered. Kale walked beside her. "There's one more thing to do." Together, they launched the final pod into space. Inside it, a black box dot with every message, every cry, every scar from the war. The pod drifted into deep space, not to hide, to wait in case the stars forgot again. And if they ever did, the ghosts would return. The end.